See who's here. As of tonight.
Okay, we're ready to go back into session. We just finished a short recess, and we completed a study session. This is the second part of our evening tonight. I want to call us to order to a special session of the Littleton City Council on June 14th. Time now is 8:30 in the evening. Can I take roll?
Mayor Beckman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman?
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik? Councilmember Clark?
Here.
Councilmember Cole? Here. Councilmember Hopping?
Here.
Councilmember Valdez?
Present.
Can you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have an agenda for the remaining part of the evening. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add an item to the agenda after the executive session. Motion to terminate the employment of the city manager.
I have a motion, and could I request maybe that it goes before the executive session,
Okay,
only because of
That's
people
fine.
who are remaining over.
before B.
I have a motion.
4B.
It would be for 4B, a motion to terminate the city manager. Do I have a second?
This is just to change the agenda.
Okay, just a change in agenda. Do I have any objections, to it being on the agenda? Okay, it remains on the agenda. Hold on, please.
Well, I would object to it being on the agenda.
I have an objection.
You have two objections.
We have two objections. I'm going to call for a vote then to leave it on the agenda. And let me make sure that I have a motion and a second then for it to be on the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for it to be on the agenda. Do I have any conversation?
So a yes is to
A
leave.
yes will be to remain that motion on the agenda.
The vote,
Bill.
Sherry, I know you. That's not right.
the vote is 4 in favor with Councilmember Brinkman and Councilmember Hopping voting no. The motion carries 4-2.
The first item on the agenda is the emergency ordinance. It's listed as 4A. This is ordinance 09-2016, an emergency ordinance imposing a temporary moratorium on the acceptance of new land use applications for property located within the B2 Community Business Zone District, and it will be presented by Andrea Mimna. Oh,
Actually, we switched.
you switched. Okay.
Sorry for that, sir. Carol Kuhn, representing Planning and Neighborhood Services. The item before you this evening is ordinance 09-216. It's an emergency ordinance imposing a temporary moratorium on the acceptance of new land use applications for property located within the B2 Community Business Zone District. Staff has prepared a map, and I don't know how you can see that if it's coming up.
Mike, can you turn on the overhead, please?
So I'll talk a little bit more about the ordinance then while we're waiting for the map to come up, sir. If that's acceptable to council. The ordinance would put into place for 90 days. It would halt applications coming forward for anything in the B2 zone district, applications for subdivision, applications for site plans, applications for, I'm trying to find all of them. So it would be, we're still waiting on the map. It would be applications submitted under 1019, including rezonings, plan development overlays, which is PDOs, and that's mentioned in your staff communication, conditional uses, and rezonings for property seeking to be included within the B2 zone district. It's also applicable to site development plans under Section 1072 and subdivision applications under 1021 in the B2 zone district. And I believe a map was presented in your staff communications, and this is just a larger version of it. In between the council communication that went out and this meeting this evening, staff noticed that 2 of the B2 properties were omitted from the map. So the current map that we have here, and I believe we have 11 by 17 inch copies that were distributed to City Council, they should reflect the true number of acres. B2 is 224.4 acres. The B2 PDO overlay district is 25.2 acres, and there's 9.5 acres of vacant land in B2 and B2 PDO. How well that translates, you did receive an updated map, though. So hopefully I can point out some areas if you have questions about some of the PDO. The hatchings, the hatching marks, the purple hatches are actually the vacant land within the B2 or B2 PDO zone district. So for orientation, the primary B2 is along the eastern edge of the city in the northeastern portion. There's a large portion of B2 along Littleton Boulevard. And then there's some other B2 properties on the outer edges of the city. So as I mentioned, this would be for 90 days upon enactment of the moratorium, and it would allow staff an opportunity to revise the B2 zone districts, the zone district bringing up into more current standards such as setbacks and some other things that could address some of the issues that council had with that zone district.
So do we have questions?
Just want to confirm, too, that it would allow for an opportunity for public outreach
Yes,
and
ma'am.
input there. And then also that the 90 days is because, since it's an emergency ordinance, it has to be 90 days. It can't be longer than that. But that this process could actually take longer, so we can come back before the 90 days and extend.
Correct. So the charter requires, or limits it to no more than 90 days. And the idea would be that planning staff would put together a work plan, and we'd come back during that time to make recommendations to council about whether to extend it or what sort of, the process for bringing forward those amendments, if any.
And as you mentioned, Commissioner Rickman, that would include the community outreach as well, open houses, anything that the council would like staff to, however you'd like us to approach the outreach portion. But, putting together some standards that would help alleviate some concerns that council has with the B2 zone district.
Thank you.
Just another question.
Yes, sir.
So, another clarification is the reason it's an emergency ordinance, and I know I looked at that because I said I'm not sure what the emergency is, but the emergency allows then a ordinance to go through without the normal first and second reading in that time period. And the concern was that we better get moving on this issue that we were concerned with now before some application would perhaps come in, and then because that application came in on the old system prior to the implementation of the moratorium, they would have standing. So that's, for clarification, why it says emergency, and that's just the term that's used, as I understand it.
Correct. So you need to find that there's an urgency here to preserve the public property, health, peace, or safety. And then during that time, then we would need to bring back a regular ordinance to extend it beyond the 90 days. If council does not find that that urgency is there, then we can just bring forward an ordinance in, normal procedure with the first and second reading, presumably first reading on July 5th.
Okay.
And for clarification, this ordinance would not affect any applications that are currently in process. It's just for new applications coming forward.
Other questions of staff?
How many applications do we currently have in progress?
I'm trying to think. I know there are at least 4 to 5 applications in that are B2.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So if we don't put a moratorium on this, and you get cracking on this, what is the problem?
So you're asking why would we need a moratorium if we could just get moving on a work program? Is that what you were implying? Yes, sir. I'm not sure. This was direction from your past council meeting that you wanted us to move forward on, put this on the agenda for the moratorium. We could move forward with the B2. We have limited staff time, but we would be able to put together a work plan, and we would be able to prioritize based on the work.
I can kind of help with that, Jared, since I brought in the motion. I think the intention to do a moratorium was to kind of set the stage for staff to be able to work on this and us work on it with them without having the potential of applications coming in that would not fall within what we're working on. So anybody that would bring an application in, anything that we have discussed or wanted to do that we have not passed as an ordinance yet would not apply. So they could continue to operate under the current way that the zoning would, all the current things that B2 zoning allows. So basically it would just say, kind of remove that risk. And I think it would also send a clear message that we are working on this, and for those that are interested in developing in our B2, that we will have more clear guidelines for you in a couple months.
So any other questions of staff? We do need a motion in a second.
I do have a question.
Okay.
If we did not do this as an emergency ordinance, if we did this as first reading of a regular ordinance, then we could do the next reading next week? Do we have a council meeting next week?
You do not, and I think we'd have to repost it as a first reading for July 5th, which is the council's next regular meeting.
Okay.
Which would put it on second reading in July 19th and approximately 7 days thereafter.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? Do I have a motion in a second?
Make a motion to enact an emergency ordinance imposing a temporary moratorium on the acceptance of new land use applications for property located within the B2 Community Business Zone District.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Discussion. Any discussion? Any further discussion?
Just one thing. If we're going to give this 90 days to get written, it's going to take 89, 90 days to get written. We should just direct that it be done and make it happen. I mean, that's been our problem. We keep waiting for things to happen. Let's just make the thing happen. That's my one comment.
As in a first, second reading?
As writing it, the code, correcting it.
Yeah, but getting it to us fast, as opposed to 90 days.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, which means you're voting against it, this motion.
Nostradamus, I haven't said either way.
Well, I just a comment. We haven't that I can remember in a while used an emergency ordinance provision, and doing it on zoning is, it's a precedent that I wouldn't want to necessarily follow. I'm not sure I know exactly what the emergency was, but I know what the concern was. I don't know that I'm comfortable doing it as an emergency ordinance, just because I think those are very specifically for the purpose stated by the attorney, and it has to do with health, safety, and those kinds of things. This, to me, is, bad planning isn't health and safety, in my opinion. We just need to do the planning and get it done. So I'm not comfortable doing it as an emergency ordinance.
Mayor, if I may, one of the concerns when I think Councilman Brinkman had asked for it to come back as a emergency ordinance, and one of the concerns, and I think we've seen this in other places, is that if developers are cognizant that there is a pending ordinance with some type of moratorium on it, the potential is there for them to put together a completed yet not complete application and get those in the pipeline. And once they're in the pipeline, it's under the existing legal precedent that's there. And so by putting in the moratorium, Brinkman had asked for it to come back as we're going to hear that again. Emergency ordinance. And one of the concerns, and I think we've.
Whoops,
So sorry.
That's right.
I was checking to see if it was streaming. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I wondered if I continued on that, and I wouldn't even have to finish. They would have finished for me.
I
So,
apologize.
so there is a concern, and that's, I think, part of what we're trying to mitigate. It is not unusual, and I think our city attorney can speak to it, to use the emergency ordinance in this circumstance. We may not have done it before, but that's what we're trying to mitigate, our applications complete from a application standpoint, but not well thought through, that get in the pipeline, and we want to stop that so we can address the B2 issues.
So can I ask a question then? So would you think, based on what you just said, that if we didn't do this, somebody might do a rather rushed job of getting something in the pipeline that would be a hell of a lot worse? I didn't.
Whether it's worse or not, it would be under the existing.
No, but I mean
rules.
that might be very good, but that someone also could just want to get a project coming
that
forward.
number of pending applications could go from 5 to 10. I mean, we don't have any indication of that, but one of the reasons, at least for the emergency, is to ensure the council and the community that effective this evening, it's whatever the actual number is that Carol referred to, roughly 5. So, and it would be no more until such time that the moratorium is lifted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And based on that explanation, I'm more willing to vote on it. And we know that B2 includes 20-story buildings, no setback, and a number of other issues that certainly would be of a concern. So, any other discussion? Are we ready for a vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
This brings us to item 4B, a motion that was added to the agenda by Councilmember Clark.
Okay, I move that the city council terminate the employment of the city manager effective immediately.
Do I have a second?
I would make a second to this with great distress.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have discussion?
I have a comment.
Comment.
If you're going to make a second with great distress, perhaps it's time to reconsider your decision. This is an interesting turn of events. You've got 2 council members up here that are completely excluded from any conversation on letting go our main direct report. You have 1 council member who's not even here. That's nice. So obviously, 4 council members have had substantial conversations outside of the public purview, or maybe with the public they speak to. And meanwhile, the others have had not that same consideration. I think this is a drastic mistake. I'm not going to go into great detail on it because there's no changing the 4 of your minds. I will save many of my comments for a later time when I feel that they'll be more appropriately appreciated.
Any other comments? Jerry?
I think as far as the discussion goes, I received calls and talked to Bill and also talked to you, Councilman Brinkman. And as far as Phil not being here, I believe Phil should have recused himself during this discussion anyway, because it was just a matter of weeks ago that he performed a ceremony to wed the city manager and his bride. And that, I believe, put him in a position where he would have to recuse himself anyway.
Just a comment to that, Jerry. I called you after after you told Councilmember Hopping at the recess last week that you were going to fire City Manager Penny. So
That's
my
incorrect.
call to you.
I never said such thing.
Okay.
Never said that.
That's fine.
Further
So
comments?
my call to you was based on hearing that information.
Okay. I didn't have it, the first discussion I had was with Bill and then with you.
Okay.
Further discussion?
So I'd at least like to clarify the distress. It is never with joy, never in my life have I been involved in something with joy that involved something negative for another person. Never. So this was very difficult for me.
Further discussion?
I think there's a number of issues that have driven me to do this. One of them is the lack of competence that's happened in the urban renewal process. The most recent example is the council passing the Santa Fe plan when they had a piece of property that wasn't in the city limits. The county sent a letter to the city notifying them of that. They went ahead and did it anyway. Then when the city got worried about not having enough property in there to include the agricultural area, they came back for a clarifying amendment to the Santa Fe plan to add in property that wasn't in the legal description, but they thought was in the plan. Even doing the clarification, the language ended up being wrong. The courts disallowed it, and the process wasn't correctly followed. As the court points out, if you're going to add property to the plan, you have to notify the property owners, and you have to blight the property, neither which has been happening or happened. I'm perplexed on the interpretation of the subdivision exemption and and how we get to that. That section was extensively rewritten in 2012 on Mr. Penny's watch. There's absolutely no mention in that section of lot line adjustments or combining lots. If lot line adjustments or combining lots are not in the subdivision exemption, they're not in there because Mr. Penny did not put them in or instruct his staff to do it. And then to claim that the subdivision exemption is difficult to interpret is disingenuous. I think that each council person needs to be provided with all the information that the other council people get. That's not happening. And I think that publicly announcing policy decisions that are rightfully the purview of the council before consulting council or getting the council approval is an overstep of boundaries. So it's these issues, among others, that have motivated me to make this motion.
Do we have further discussion, Bill?
I'll answer a couple of questions first. On the recusal of Phil, I hear your point. But first of all, recusal has to be done by the person asking to be recused. And I don't believe our charter allows us to recuse except in cases of, and I'll rely on a lawyer to straighten me out, but it has to be malfeasance, which is specifically defined. It's not a term carelessly thrown out, or theft, or matters of that nature. So as far as asking someone to recuse himself, it sounds to me like you're afraid they may support that person. And there are people like Mr. Clark who made the motion who obviously are predisposed to vote in favor of this. So if you're going to ask Phil to recuse himself, maybe Mr. Clark should. And we should just go on down the line and last man standing gets to vote.
Yes.
So
Let me ask Doug. Doug, did you marry Mr. Penny?
I think that's a whole different arena. And then as far as talking to council members, Jerry, I did call you and we did talk. But the first I found out about it was at the break when you said, I think I know the problem and I think it's Michael. Mm-hmm. And that was the first I had any hint. You said you're ready to do it now. And that's how I got communicated with about this. I'm one of 7 people that was elected to this body. And I don't think it's right for 4 people to go behind other people's backs and make this arrangement before we've been told about it. This is about the 3rd time this has happened. It's happened with urban renewal. I got a call that there were 4 votes to get rid of it, and it was over. I got notification of this, that there were 4 people. And there's another one that my memory bank has pleasantly unwrapped. So I'm very distressed about that piece of it. I hear Mr. Clark's complaints, lack of confidence, and because of urban renewal, and also because subdivision exemptions. Doug, you spend a lot of time looking at this stuff, and I respect the fact that you drill down into things, but we have a city attorney. We have an urban renewal attorney. And I think all of us are well advised to listen to attorneys rather than what's your legal training? You're a retired computer consultant. I'm a hotel consultant. I don't give legal advice. And I think to base a lack of confidence on those is not to put faith in the people that we hire to do that. Uneven info is always an issue. And I think that's remedial. Something that we can say, look, we're not happy with the way this is doing. Let's do something about this. Michael, I think you got your last review when, Michael, last fall? October. Since then, we've had a change in council. There are changing expectations at all time. It's important to sit down with your employees and express those. When I first was appointed to council, I think it's fair to say I didn't get along well with Michael at all. We had a lot of rough spots, and you're sitting down there smiling because he knows it's true. But I've made it a point to have breakfast with Michael once a week, or have lunch, or meet with him and talk about issues, or do something, because as a council member, it's part of my responsibility to build a relationship. And there are still places we get sideways, and there always would be, and I hope will be. But this move is not about Michael. This is about city council. This is about the way we treat people. It's about the way we treat employees. It's about the way any one of you, and I hope all of you have had jobs, would expect to be treated if there are people in the supervisory role who are having issues with the way you're performing. You deserve the human courtesy of having somebody sit down with you and go through the issues. And my understanding, after this came up, is that the people who sit down and talk with Michael are the 3 people, I think, who are opposed to this motion: Debbie and Phil and myself, because we work through issues. And if there's something we don't like, we work through it. We talk about it. It's not a perfect process. There needs to be due process here. And we need to have an actionable plan for him if there are people that have legitimate concerns. There has been a total lack of transparency here, and that's what sunshine is all about, theoretically, but apparently it doesn't apply when they want to do something. The fact that we have one council member missing tonight, I think, is very unfortunate. A couple other things. How many of you have asked questions of the city manager tonight and wanted an answer? He has, I don't know how many years of experience in this arena, and he has a very good reputation in the statewide city manager stable. We are entering into budget season. We have a housing study that's underway to assist our seniors. It's coming at a time when our desire for community culture changes and implementation are being screamed for from our community. And there are ways to implement that, but we need professional leadership at the staff level to do that. We have infrastructure that Mayor Beckman, you called for at the beginning of this year, and it takes expertise to put those systems together. We have police and fire partners who have written letters of support for Mr. Penny when they found out he was in trouble. And that's unprecedented. Back when we had prior councils, the confidence in the city manager was at an all-time low, and it had to be built up, and both of those letters addressed how Mr. Penny did that. That's invaluable stuff that we don't even see all the time. We just get to experience the benefit of it. We have strong staff support, which has been expressed to me by several department heads. This is a knee-jerk firing without due process, and it's improper. One thing you've got to consider if you go through with this is, what's this do to the pool of available applicants? What applicant in their right mind would want to come to a council and work for a council that would do this without giving someone an opportunity to work through specific issues that are being brought up? I don't deny any of your issues if they're your issues. If you don't like something, if your feelings have been hurt, if you feel there's been an error, if you feel that there's been a mismanagement of an area, let's work through it and see if there is a resolution before you fire somebody. This threatens city services to a great degree because there's a lot of integration from department to department. And it cripples the city for about 18 months. And I've talked to people at South Suburban that went through management change. I talked to people who were here at the city when we last changed managers. And by the time you go through the initial shock, posting a job, defining what you want, hiring the right search firms, interviewing applicants, getting them in to interview, going through the entire vetting process, do the hiring, move them to town, get them up to speed, and get the departments operating again, is about 18 months. Do we really want to stop the city for 18 months without due process? I'm not saying there's never a time that you don't make replacements, but let's be decent and professional and not reactive. One of our most courageous needs is to listen and do what's the right thing. This is no way to act as a council, and it makes me challenge our own leadership. We have had, over the last 6 months, a multi-pronged approach to dismantle this city. We've rejected a streetscape plan that could do future planning. There are attempts to take apart urban renewal, and now to fire the city manager. And this is a methodical dismantling of the city's ability to perform that has long-term implications. Each one of those can be individually argued as something we should get rid of. But there should be a due process here, not something we'll four people decide on and we'll come back and argue specific points. But this type of action results in cultural voids in a city that will be filled by negative components when you cannot stop progress. And I agree that Michael is not perfect, and anybody in this room who is should stand up now. And I think I'm astonished that the four of you have done this, and I like each one of you individually, believe it or not, the way some of these things go, but I think this is a dramatically reactive mood that reflects badly on each of us as a council member individually, as a whole, on the city as a whole, and it diminishes our chances to function as a city in the future, no matter what your stance is on any issue. So I'm vigorously opposed to this type of impulsive action, and I urge you to reconsider this and work with Michael, and I'm willing to volunteer to help put together a plan, help sift through grievances, and I'm willing to work with any one of you to do it. And I'll start tomorrow morning.
I have a motion.
Motion?
Amend the motion. Make an amendment to the motion that there is a council meeting on June 28th, and this motion is going to be sloppy, Wendy and Kristen, so weed out, to work together as a 7-member council to put together an aggressive work plan for our city manager. All of the details of that work plan would be established at that time, including the timeline and the expectations. Is that clear?
I'll second that.
So we have an amendment to the motion, and that's to have a council meeting on June 28th, at which time 7 council members would work together to build an aggressive work plan.
Yes. And, you know, again, I have I've spoken to Peggy this week, I've spoken to Bruce, and I've spoken to Jerry, and I've let each of you share with me your concerns, and I did not, I'm not going to debate those with you. I think those are each individual's concerns, and they're real for you, and it's part of your relationship with Michael. But I think that what I'm not hearing is that there's been a lot of share back to Michael about this. Some of the comments have been issues that I think are incumbent upon us as council members to work with our direct reports, to work with our city manager and our city attorney when we have these issues. Bill's right. Michael and I, and Michael and Bill, and Michael and Phil spend a lot of time having conversations, meeting, and none of it is illegal, and none of it's wrong, and all of it's right, because what we're doing is we're working through these issues, and we're figuring things out. I have about 6 projects that I'm working on right now that I'm working with Michael on, and I think that there is absolutely nothing to be gained by dropping this kind of bomb when there hasn't been any opportunity for there to be a conversation between the 8 of us. It will need to be a public conversation, but it has to happen, because the lack of that has created a situation where tomorrow morning we wake up without a city manager. We've got a staff whose morale goes in the tank. We've got union negotiations for both of our fire and police. We've got a budget coming up. We've got about 4 different plans that are being worked on. It goes on. I mean, we have a responsibility to work through things. If we can't work through them and the manager's been given an opportunity, then you're going to get a 7-0 vote. But to have a split vote with a missing council member when there hasn't been an opportunity for the city manager to try to right his wrong, save his job, work with his council is, in my opinion, one of the most egregious things this council will ever do. And I don't believe we're there.
Jerry. And Mr. Hopkins wasn't on the board or council, neither was Doug Clark. But when we recently, or a few years ago, when we dismissed one of our direct reports, it was the city manager who led the way to remove that person on our part, without giving that person a second chance, without giving that person a corrective action plan. But it was the city manager who led that way to remove that person, to convince us. And now you're asking that we do that for him. Not that I'm disagreeing with you, but if you remember, and you weren't here then, but some of you were, we didn't give that person corrective action plan. We didn't give that person a second chance either. And again, it was the city manager who led that way.
But that doesn't make it right.
Doesn't make it wrong either.
additional discussion.
I'd point out that, at least since I've been on council, I think the council as a whole has, not only the one, Jerry, you referred to, there were two others that, direct reports, that council did not have significant, if any, discussion with. But I think we are going forward. I think we need to look at how we do annual evaluations. We've had several different ways of doing them. And I need to say this, put in context why I'm feeling the need to vote the way I do. But we had the little, what do you call them, the bubble evaluation things. And you could write comments, and I did. And there were some areas that I thought could use improvement or whatever. And then how was it phrased? The most frequently checked bubble is the one that was chosen. So the people that checked some areas that they thought were weak pretty much got dismissed. We never followed up on that. And I was not in charge. I was not on the committee that put all this together. So it's not just now, it's people who were on the evaluation committee with the process that was used that didn't really say, oh, somebody, 2 or 3 people or whatever it is, have an issue about this aspect or that aspect. Let's get together, let's talk about this, let's see how we can fix. To do this is not to say somebody is a piece of junk, but it is saying something about whether or not we think we need to do something a little bit differently, maybe significantly differently. And like it or not, the chief executive, whether it's of a college or a city or a company, whatever, needs to be in touch with all levels of employment. At the college level, you have presidents, vice presidents, deans, department chairs, faculty. And if there's a problem somewhere down the line, that president in some way needs to be addressing that, helping that change, improve, whatever. We've had a couple of issues within less than, 6, 8 months, losing track of time here, where, for example, we had an issue with the Enzer property, and maybe that was almost a year ago, and then subsequently somebody realizes that a wrong ruling from the planning department had been made, and the permit was retracted. We now have an incredible issue with the property in the city, and I don't know how that happened, but it seems to me somebody should have been communicating up or down or whatever so that we wouldn't suddenly have the problem we're in now. Either somebody misinterpreted code or just decided to interpret it the way they wanted. I don't know. But there are some issues, and they're serious. And I take no joy in doing this, but I think for 2 reasons it's an appropriate time, because it also gives the city manager a chance, if he's I think he's going to CML annual conference, to make some outreach that's going to benefit him that way.
Are you kidding?
Yes. Bill seconded it.
One last comment.
And we still have a motion on the floor for the work plan.
Right. I want to back up on the employee that we did let go a while back with the city manager's strong support. We had a pool of applicants, and we ended up with an excellent replacement. So it doesn't concern me that we're not going to have applicants for this position. There's always going to be applicants. However, I am willing to consider Debbie's motion.
Thank you.
Councilman Brinkman, that is.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second, and we're continuing the discussion to have a work plan. The issue with the work plan is, quite honestly, we're dealing with a 6-year professional, 5-year professional at the city with the highest levels of education and training, who is paid considerable amounts of money. And I'm not sure that that's where I've ever seen a work plan used. I think it's usually used for people that are new to the program, new to the training, learning something that maybe they've never done before, or new to the job, need to receive additional training in order to be effective. That's what a work plan's for. And I have to tell you that I'm questioning that use in this. Also, a lot of stuff is thrown out about people's motivations. There's been a couple things that I've suggested that would have been probably a work plan. Perhaps one of them I've mentioned 3 times in council was an interest in documenting citizen concerns and reporting back to council what the responses are to keep the council informed. It was brought to attention in different manners, but it was just never really done. And that's a work plan. I don't want to get, it's very difficult to do this. You understand, we're doing what this community has asked for. The community asked for these personnel actions to be performed in public by the council. That's what the requirement to the charter is. We are only allowed to have executive sessions in very, 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 very limited circumstances, and personnel issues is not one of them. So this is very difficult. But as to the issue of being open and transparent, I'm troubled to how more open and transparent we could possibly be than sitting here discussing it, and that's a really difficult circumstance. But I'm not in favor of a work plan. I just think that we've done evaluations. I remember particular comments that were made in the evaluations that I don't really want to discuss openly, but I think they might have addressed some of the issues that might be issues that exist still today. The one issue that I am concerned about is communication, and I'm going to talk a moment, but I'm not sure that all the requests for communication that have been made by the council members is going to be solved by a work plan, so I'm not in favor of that. Any other discussion? Peggy?
Yeah. A recent issue that to me was distressing was what I perceive as the city manager selectively ignoring the charter. We all, I'm sure, are aware of the murder-suicide that Channel 7 so dreadfully dealt with, the way it dealt with it. And so the second time when they came, they went, it's my understanding, to the city manager to ask him to comment, and he referred the issue to the mayor. Now, why would we have a charter that says you will not be involved in personnel issues, and yet ask the mayor to have to address the Channel 7 about the way the police handled that issue? I think that was the city manager's responsibility, as dreadful as it was. So it's maybe to some people that's not important, to me it is.
Further discussion on the work plan?
I think just one point that occurs to me that's difficult, and I think we all get frustrated, and it's a natural part of it. Jerry and I were trying to get planning board last year to meet more often, and we'd mention it, didn't necessarily happen, but I've told Michael in our conversation that I used to have his job because I was a country club manager, and I reported to a board of directors, and I had 500 people who demanded my attention at all times. And they did a thing, and I'm not suggesting this here, but they did a thing where I took direction from one person. And that was because one person on the board would come in and say, paint the locker room orange, and the other one would say, paint it blue. And all I could say was, go Broncos. I mean, you can't do two things that are opposite directions. And I think when I have a tendency to think when I say at the microphone, gee, I'd really like to see the ability for us to have AV up here so that if we have a display, we can show it to the audience as well. So that Doug didn't have to, like last week when you testified, it's a little bit awkward for a council member to go down and you have to break up the meeting and all that. I thought that was a pretty good idea to be able to have it up here. But is that an ask, or does it have to go in the old Jim Woods thing? Do we have to have 4 of us agree? And I'm not sure we're being fair to staff or to us not to have a system in place. And I think that's part of what, if I understand Councilwoman Brinkman's motion, well, maybe that's part of that conversation. Are there ways we could be more fair in dealing with this? And Mr. Brezak, I appreciate your deep breath. So I'd like to see if we can figure out a way to give this an effort. And if Michael fails to meet it, then it's 7-0. But I think we owe it to ourselves, to our city, and to the community at large, and to give this a shot. So I fully support Councilwoman Brinkman's motion.
If I may, one more comment, please. I think a perfect example of why there should be a work plan in place is Councilmember Cole, your comment regarding the situation with the media. My conversation with Michael related to that situation is completely different than the one you just related. So clearly, you have a understanding of what happened. I've heard a very different understanding of what happened, and if that's good enough to remove a man from his job, I would suggest that it isn't. I would suggest that Michael spent 5 years earning the privilege at least to be able to hear those issues and be able to work on a corrective plan, or to at least make sure that there's a clear understanding of what happened and why it happened. Having some misunderstandings or having some things that were not properly communicated, or that there wasn't communication, and just letting these things just pile up, and then removing the city manager from office seems to me to be a pretty extreme measure, asking for like 2 weeks to get to a study session, to work on a work plan. Call it what you may, it may not be, work plan may not be the appropriate language, but I don't think that that is a far ask at all. I mean, we're sitting up here arguing about whether we should have an emergency ordinance on this. What's emergency mean? Well, how much time? Oh, well, maybe we could go 4 weeks longer. So again, I think we need to perspective this a little bit.
Mayor Beckman, do you think, I don't know if Mr. Penny wants to speak or not.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me first say clearly the decision of who your city manager is solely yours, and I would honor any decision that you make. I want you to know, and I want everyone in the room to know, that it's truly been an honor to serve this community over these last 5 years. I'm incredibly proud of the organizational changes we've made. The list of our employees' accomplishments is too great to list, but I encourage you, anyone in the room or any of the council, to talk to any of them, and I'm sure you get an earful of what a great place this is to work. We have made significant service delivery improvements from how we plow our snow, our streets on our snow, to our one-stop shop, to our public outreach approaches. Again, I'm proud of how our staff has taken on these great improvements. Our community survey results continue to see our service delivery needle move upwards in the positive rankings. We've built a great team to work with this council and this community. Our leadership team is operated with only the highest level of integrity and ethical pride and legal review. Our staff's commitment to the community shows in the work that each of them provide all of us on a daily basis. I want to offer a deep thank you and debt of gratitude to our staff, the incredible staff who take such pride in providing service to this community. And I want to thank the City Council for the opportunity to serve as the head of this great organization. I would like to continue to do so. This is a wonderful community, and I'm incredibly proud of what we've done and how far we've come. Thank you.
Are we ready to vote on the motion on the
Mayor?
floor, which has...
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I clarify that this was labeled as a motion to amend, but I think practically it's a motion to postpone to the 26th so that a work plan can be discussed. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a motion to amend the motion presented by Councilmember Clark to have a council meeting on June 28th to work together, to work on an aggressive work plan. If that amendment was to pass, I think it does change the nature of Councilmember Clark's initial motion.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to reconcile, so that that practically, I think that this is a motion to table to the 28th. Because if it were a motion to amend, it wouldn't make sense then to vote. You would then be
Whatever
voting on the main
is
motion.
legally correct to do.
Okay.
The intention is to
To wait until the 28th.
have a conversation with the 8 of us to hopefully work on a work plan, yes.
Okay.
If what comes out of that is absolutely nothing, then,
We'll take back up that motion
Yeah.
at that time. Okay.
So just in clarity then, based on the attorney's information, this is a motion to table to June 28th in order to have the issue presented in a motion by Councilmember Clark to June 28th to work on an aggressive work plan.
Correct.
So please clarify then, if we table to the 28th to develop a work plan, I think somebody just said something to this effect, that essentially contradicts the original motion. You're not tabling it, you're essentially replacing a motion.
So my understanding would be at the 28th, you would develop a work plan, and if council doesn't feel that they can reach a work plan or they're dissatisfied with the work plan, then at that point, you would take up the motion and either vote it up or down based on the
So
work plan that does or doesn't come out of that session.
So we'd spend time developing a work plan, and at the same meeting, then decide, then vote on the motion that Doug made?
Correct. So if you're satisfied with the work plan, then you would vote down the motion or amend it in some way. But if you're not satisfied with the work plan, or don't think that a work plan is workable, then at that point, you would take up the main motion.
Well, I'm not trying to belabor this, but I guess my college English teaching is coming out here. It seems to me they're contradictory motions. We're going to either develop a work plan or not if Debbie's motion goes forward. It's not to see if we can develop one, it's to develop one, in which case we won't be voting. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have a motion then that we do. Could we take maybe 5 minutes so my head can wrap around this?
I'd like to I'd like to take a recess then for about 5 minutes so we can understand all the issues that are being presented to us. We'll meet back in 5 minutes.
So if the intent
Okay, it's 9:36. We're back from our recess. The issue on the floor is an amended motion with a second, and the challenge that we were facing at the time that we took the recess was exactly the wording and whether that was a amendment to a motion or whether that was a motion to table with some future activity, if I gather that. So was anything arrived at as far as an understanding of those motions?
Yeah, the city attorney recommends that we withdraw the original motion. I withdraw, and you had the second. Do you withdraw the second?
I don't know where you're going with this, but
You can withdraw the second.
I can withdraw the second.
And then to table the original motion to July 5th. And schedule we have a meeting scheduled for July 28th, which is a study session, and schedule a discussion with the city manager on a performance plan. Does that clarify it? Is that what you need?
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Can
writing
you
those.
read
Table?
that?
I can repeat, I think I can repeat that. To table the motion to July 5th and schedule a discussion with the city manager on a performance plan at that meeting.
June 28th.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, I think I said July. June 28th.
July 5th.
okay, June.
July 5th, but June 28th is the discussion on work performance plan. Okay, got it.
Okay,
Okay,
so then I
Wait
will
one.
second that.
Okay, so we have a second.
hold on, I'm reading to make sure I get this. Okay, table the motion to July 5th and schedule a discussion with the city manager regarding a performance plan at the June 28th study session. Okay, and that has been seconded. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Further discussion? None? We ready to vote?
Yes, vote is.
The yes vote is to table table the motion to July 5th and schedule a discussion with the city manager regarding a performance plan at the June 28th study session.
The vote is 3 in favor with Councilmember Cole, Councilmember Clark, and Councilmember Beckman voting no. The motion fails 3-3.
This brings us back to the original motion, which we were discussing. Additional discussion. I have not made a comment yet. A couple comments. I think over this last month, we've had a pretty intensive public involvement about a number of issues that certainly are major concerns for the future of the city. And I'm very concerned how we got here. But I want to talk to you about something else. I think each council member is coming at this with a different point of view. The thought that 4 of us are together on any one thing is kind of strange because we all come from 4 different points of view. I need to tell you that my point of view is based on my experience. It's unique, and I'm making my judgment based on what I have experienced, particularly in the last 8 months. But what's crystal clear to me in the last couple weeks is that there is a definite issue here. Peggy alluded to it, and I think it deserves discussion, and I hadn't intended to do that. And this is where the issue of faith and trust in this relationship of council to the manager fits. Council members were all called by an investigative reporter to return a phone call. several council members called the city manager and said, "What's up? We don't know anything about this." We were told, "Really nothing. It's nothing. He's just trying to get a news story." I wouldn't even return the call. You can if you want, some have, but there's nothing to it. Okay. I didn't return the phone call and I went on about the business. I got several other phone calls, as did, I believe, council members. And I actually asked city manager, and I was told it was really nothing. It was sweeps week, and that's why the investigative reporter was trying to contact me to try to get something visual, and that neither the manager nor anybody else in the city was going to respond. To which I said, okay. Then I got a personal phone call, a personal email, actually, to the mayor that said, "I'm going to be continuing my investigation, trying to wrap it up on Tuesday or Monday and Tuesday next week. Looking for an interview," to me, which got me involved again. At which I heard it's sweeps week. There's nothing to it. There's nothing really here. We're not really going to talk to him. We're not going to respond. To which I told the city manager, "Well, I'll tell you what. I feel like this person's going to ambush us, council," because we were all included, and we got a council meeting coming up on a Tuesday, and we have a pizza meet and greet coming up on a Monday. And I'm very concerned about a council member getting ambushed by an investigative reporter, basically, with no information. So I need some information. We need some training if we're going to be doing this. We need to know something. To which was responded from a staff member at the city, "Well, it's good to tell newspaper people how much sympathy you have and what the concerns might be and that." And, I really didn't understand what even the story was. So then I learned that it was the death of a woman in our city. And it wasn't just sweeps week. But let me tell you more. At that time, I said to the city manager, "Well, I don't understand this and why he's coming to the mayor, but I got to tell you, if I'm going to get ambushed or a council member is going to get ambushed by a press person and have to fall on their sword for the city, I expect to see the city manager falling on the sword for the city, the communications director falling on the sword for the city, the chief of police falling on the sword for the city, the public relations person for the police department falling on their sword for the city before it gets to the mayor. Because it's operational, it's personnel, it has nothing to do with what council does." Followed up by another meeting in which I saw a couple members of staff, and I said, "What is up?" "Nothing, it's nothing, it's really nothing." Well, I got ambushed at the pizza deal. Really, I had no knowledge whatsoever of it. And I learned from the reporter that he had been investigating this for 3 months, that there were issues with possibly misplaced or hidden information, that there was a problem with the reports, that the city had not provided all reports to the victims, and that this was the reporter's point of view. And then comes the interview on one of the channels where the mayor's asked, "Well, what do you think of a department that doesn't provide information?" I said, I could not imagine such a thing. I can't believe it happening. I've never had a communication till right now with the city manager about that event. He knows it happened to me. He knows what the circumstance was. He knows I wasn't told the full truth. He knows I wasn't prepared, and I know he set the other council people up for that same thing, and it happened that I stepped up first. And I've never been told this was going to be on the news. I was never told there was a follow-up. I was never told there was a problem. Police chief takes control and leadership and explains exactly what the circumstance is 10 days after my interview, 10 days after. During that time, I had come down to the department and pulled 6 Cora reports, Colorado Open Records Acts, by that reporter, starting in March. And this was May. It wasn't sweep weeks. It wasn't anything. It was an absolute lack of candid discussion by the city manager and the staff with the mayor about a real problem in the police department that the chief of police since then has taken control of. My sense of confidence in the city manager left with this event. And this is the first time I've talked about it. The city manager is very proud of saying, you know, it's all about trust. You know, you got to trust us, Bruce. You got to trust the staff. We're right behind you. We're backing you up. And I don't believe that anymore. And that's why this is happening now. It has nothing to do with a discussion with Sunshine. It has nothing to do with any of the other events that are going on. It doesn't have anything to do with the Grove. I've lost confidence. And I wouldn't have talked about it tonight had Peggy not brought it up. And that's a long story, but it is a problem. Further discussion?
Mayor Beckman, you are talking about a lack of communication, and I didn't hear that story until 2 weeks after it happened, 3 weeks. So communication goes a lot of ways. I could have been ambushed by Kovaleski. If you were that worried about it, sir, you should have told me. It may have been coming to me, too. And I would think that after 30 years on the police force, you could handle a quote. I actually listened to the story, and I thought you sounded good on it, to tell you the truth. And Kovaleski ended that investigative report by saying, with no real conclusion, he's an investigative reporter. His job is to go out there and stir it up, and he's good at it. And but at the end of the day, he said, good for Littleton for coming clean on this and improving their procedures. So I think
Bill,
actually it worked well.
You missed the
So
point.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this to the next meeting on the basis the full council is not present. The last motion would have passed had Mr. Cernanek been here and decided to vote in favor of it. And to fire a first-level employee, the city manager, without the full council, I think does not show respect for the city, the position, or the situation.
Second.
Give me the date again. Did you want to table that too?
The next regular meeting,
July 5th.
July 5th.
Table this meeting and table this discussion to July 5th, when 7 members are present. What else, Bill?
That's it.
That would be it? So I have a motion on the floor to table this to July 5th. Do I have a second? Do I have a second to table this until July 5th?
I seconded it,
You seconded
yeah.
it? Okay. Discussion.
We're just repeating the process of tabling this over and over again. Not going to get us anywhere.
Well, let's vote and see where it gets us.
Ready to vote?
The vote is 2 in favor with Councilmember Cole, Clark, Beckman, and Valdez voting no. The motion fails 2-4.
This brings us back to our original motion.
Just one comment. Based on the fact that we have 6 council members here, a negative, a vote in the nay, 3 votes in the nay win. So I would suggest any council member who might be interested in moving this to a study session for a work plan put together on the 28th, a no vote on this particular motion, I will be happy then to make a motion to put on the agenda the study session for work plan on the 28th.
Can
I
you
don't
just
think
repeat
I
that?
understood.
I'm not sure I
Say
understand.
that again, Debbie.
Try to do the same motion again.
If there is 3 noes, then this motion dies. At that point, I would make a motion that we move this to a study session on the 28th for a work plan, construction for Manager Penny, which is what we attempted to do prior, but because of the missing council member, our nay votes are a little bit more powerful.
So the motion is to move,
No, it's the original motion. I'm just making a comment that if there were 3 nays, that I would make that motion afterwards so that there would be a work plan in place.
so I'm not sure I'm understanding.
The original motion is to fire Manager Penny because we have 6 members, a tie goes to the negative. So if 3 of us vote no, not to fire him, then I would make a motion that we would have a work plan on the 28th. We put together a work plan on the 28th, which essentially puts the council in the room with the manager to work through the issues and put him on an aggressive performance plan. And it's not a motion now, but I'm just saying, if it fails, that would be a motion I would make after.
Discussion.
Yes, please. Here's the reason, part of the reason I've lost faith. The spending of our citizens' money is critical to all of us. It's crucial that we do it right. Several years ago, when we did the fire study with Inglewood, to see if we could bring them in somehow, I had asked for the sole source, and the then chief that we had, he's no longer our chief, didn't have one, and you were okay with that. Then just recently, we had the streetscape, and while the plan, I wasn't against the plan, what I was opposed to was that we did a sole source, and we didn't justify why we were going to spend $200,000 on that particular company. When I asked for the sole source, I got in writing, that's because we don't have to. That put a huge concern to me that if we can get away with stuff the way things are written, we don't have to really do a better job for the city. I think we could have done a better job at that time. I wasn't opposed to the streetscape, I was opposed at how we got to that point. I think Broadstone, again, a while back, the city council was, I believe it was 7-0 against Broadstone. And then with the Grove, somewhat different. It's my understanding that you were not involved with the process and some things in there happened that, some of us aren't happy about. But that helped to get us where we are today. There's been times when you and I have discussed it where you have not been forthright with me, period. And at one point, you even told me because it was political, you had to say those things. I have lost confidence. And I hung in there for as long as I could. That's it.
Additional comments?
No.
Councilmember Cole, any additional comments?
No, I'm sorry.
Do we have any additional comments? Okay, we have it on the floor. This time we have the original motion, as it was made by Councilmember Clark. It was to terminate the city manager. It was seconded. We've had a couple amendments and discussions, but we are now back to that original motion. A yes vote is to do that, and we have no further discussion. We ready for a vote?
So explain the yeses.
Yes. No, a yes agrees with Councilmember Clark's motion, which is to terminate the city manager. Do we need to take another recess to think about this? Are we okay? Good, okay.
The vote is 4 in favor. The motion carries with Councilmember Brinkman and Councilmember Hopping voting no. 4-2.
We've got a executive session coming up. That's the next item. What I'd like to do is read the requirement to go into an executive session and then take a little break while we do that. I move to convene an executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, parens 4, parens B, and Section 27 of the City Charter for the purpose of conferring with the city attorney and receiving legal advice regarding case number 2015 CV 32363, Burkett versus City of Littleton et al. That's the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. This, for the city attorney's basis, this will be, how many votes in order to ensure it? Because it's a supermajority?
2/3 of the quorum present, so 4.
4, okay. So it'll take 4 votes to go to executive session. Ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor with Councilmember Brinkman voting no. The motion carries 5-1.
Okay, so the next item will be to have council meet in executive session. I have no idea how long that will take. When we come back, though, we need to adjourn at the dais here because this is the record, the official record of this evening is the video, and so we can't just adjourn from another location. We're going to come back to this point.
Will there be any action?
I don't anticipate any action coming from the executive session, and in the executive session will be the city attorney, legal counsel Jennifer Kemp from the law firm of Centra Goldfarb and Rice, and the members of council, except Councilmember Cernatic. Okay, we'll meet back in executive session in about 5 minutes.
Is that in the conference room?
It'll be in the building conference room. Hey, Wendy, you don't need a roll, do you, again? No.
No, sir.
Okay. Ready?
Well, since,
Okay, it's 10:35 in the evening. We're back in session after having an executive session, and unless there's something someone has,
didn't notice that
we have,
there are only 5 of us here now?
We'd need an explanation of why Debbie isn't here.
Wendy wasn't feeling well and she left.
Okay, that's all I need.
Or Debbie was not feeling well when she left.
Thank you.
So,
Coma?
yeah, we're adjourned.